Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome if you're new. Thank you for taking time out of your day to check the video out. We have more PlayStation news, rumors, and leaks to go over and cover here today. So do me a favor before we dive into these topics. If you end up enjoying the video or finding it informative, be sure to leave it a like. Helps the videos out more than you know. And if you are new here to the channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button as well. The first topic we're diving into talks about Hogwarts Legacy. Hogwarts Legacy has officially become the most watched single-player game on Twitch, breaking a record. Reading from PlayStation Universe, Hogwarts Legacy has officially become the most watched single-player game on Twitch, with more than 1.3 million people watching it at the same time, according to the latest reports. This record is still broken when plenty of streamers downright refuse to play the game on their own moral terms, and it seems a whole host more of streamers who won't play it because they don't want to deal with the backlash. And yeah, I don't know if you guys have been seeing this lately, but it's absolutely ridiculous, completely absurd. Streamers are apparently being bullied out of playing Hogwarts Legacy. You know, people who are excited for this game, who just want to stream it, you know, for their audiences, they're being bullied in some cases by their own audiences, but by, you know, others joining that stream and just kind of harassing them. It's completely ridiculous. I think we can all agree on that. But regardless of all that nonsense, the game is still out here clearly doing amazingly well. And it makes sense that this would be a game to break a record like this, considering the regular version of it hasn't actually dropped yet. Anybody who's playing it or streaming it bought the deluxe edition and is, you know, getting early access to it. So yeah, good stuff here. I'm going to be really interested to see how well this game sells. Moving on from that, we are talking briefly about Forspoken. A new update is apparently coming soon. Coming from PlayStation Lifestyle, they say Square Enix's Luminous Productions released a Forspoken update just a day ago, but the studio is already hard at work on new patches for the PS5. So the head of Luminous Productions and the director of Forspoken put out a note here on the official Forspoken Twitter account, where they say, "Thank you to all the players who have enjoyed Forspoken and explored Athia since launch. We've been listening to all of your feedback and are hard at work on an upcoming patch that will include improvements to overall performance, graphics, playability, and general updates and fixes to the game content across PS5 and various PC hardware configurations. We are committed to making Forspoken the most enjoyable experience possible, and will provide an update about the timing of the patch as soon as possible. We appreciate your continued support and patience." So yeah, we haven't been talking really much about Forspoken since it launched. I think it's kind of understandable, especially now that some, you know, bigger games like Hogwarts Legacy are beginning to launch. But you know, I think that this is still reassuring for those who are still enjoying the game or who maybe were planning on picking it up a little bit later. I have seen quite a few people say that they don't really want to pay full price for this game. They're going to buy it when it eventually goes on sale. So it should be nice to know and reassuring to know that they are going to continue to improve it. And so, you know, if you do end up waiting and getting it at a discount, you'll likely end up getting, you know, in a way, a better version of the game, right? So your patience will be rewarded. But there you go. That's the latest I have for you for Forspoken. Moving on from that, we are talking about the Activision Blizzard deal. We have a very important update that I have to share with you guys. First off, this is coming from PlayStation Universe, and it says provisional findings published by a UK government agency has ruled that there would be less competition if Microsoft were to acquire publishing giant Activision Blizzard. The Competition Markets Authority, or the CMA agency, published a report on Microsoft's proposed acquisition of the Call of Duty publisher, and it isn't looking too good for the Xbox format holder. A CMA investigation has provisionally concluded that Microsoft's proposed acquisition of Activision could result in higher prices, fewer choices, and less innovation for UK gamers. The statement goes on to say that it follows a wide-ranging investigation conducted over the last 5 months to understand the market and potential impact of the deal, and includes visits to both Microsoft and Activision Blizzard, in addition to a review of over 3 million internal documents that both firms have provided to the agency. The CMA's report added that there would be less competition in regards to cloud gaming and console markets if the acquisition would go ahead. Currently, Microsoft holds 60 to 70% of the world's cloud gaming services, and the CMA suggested that its acquisition of Activision Blizzard would only reinforce its dominance in this sector. But on top of that, I have another report here from PlayStation Lifestyle that says Call of Duty could be removed from Microsoft and Activision Blizzard deal. Call of Duty may be removed from the Microsoft Activision Blizzard deal if Microsoft goes along with a suggestion from a UK regulator. The merger has been under investigation by the CMA since July of last year, which is attempting to discover whether the Microsoft Activision Blizzard merger would result in a monopoly situation. The CMA suggests Call of Duty should be removed from the deal. In the report itself, the CMA stated that it suggested 3 different options for a way to remedy any potential monopoly. It suggests a prohibition of the merger, which would result in the Activision Blizzard merger being completely null and void, and divestiture of a part of Activision's business, which would mean either selling off part of the business or selling off the section of the business that has Call of Duty, or behavioral commitments by the parties, which would mean committing to non-exclusivity. However, the CMA is also open to other options, as it states that it will also invite submissions from interested parties on these initial views. The final report on the legality of the acquisition is currently due by April 26th and will decide whether the deal should be allowed to go through. In a statement to VGC, Microsoft said, quote, "We are committed to offering effective and easily enforceable solutions that address the CMA's concerns. Our commitment to grant long-term 100% equal access to Call of Duty to Sony, Nintendo, Steam, and other preserves the deal's benefits to gamers and developers and increases competition in the market," end quote. So, yeah, this is a pretty big update. Basically, what's coming out here, to sum up what we just went over, the CMA, or the UK regulator, has basically decided that, yeah, they're not happy with this, and they think it would ultimately be bad. They offered Microsoft these 3 different options. Obviously, Microsoft's not going to take the first one. They're not just going to say, you know what, never mind, we're not going to buy them. The second one, I don't think they're going to do that either. I don't see Microsoft deciding to sell off a part of, of their acquisition. It kind of defeats the purpose. They want the whole package. The final one here, though, is the most interesting, and this is actually the most likely, where it says behavioral commitments by the parties, which would mean committing to non-exclusivity. Now, this, I think, is a little bit different. This isn't like a 10-year deal. I think what might end up having to happen here is Microsoft is going to have to make basically what sounded ridiculous at first, but what may end up being needed is a permanent commitment that they could be held to, where you just simply cannot ever, under any circumstances, remove Call of Duty or make it exclusive. That might be something they actually have to do, and that obviously is very different from a 10-year deal. The whole thing with the 10-year deal is, even though that seems like the absolute longest you would get reasonably when it comes to business deals, this would go much further than that. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I do also want to say, before moving on, the reason why I think that 3rd option is the most likely is because of Microsoft's comment to VGC, where they say they are committed to grant long-term 100% equal access. That could end up meaning that, yeah, if Microsoft basically has to legally agree that, they're going to permanently make it so Call of Duty is available, I think they're going to be on board with doing that. And I will say, I think Sony would actually be happy with this, because at the end of the day, I really do think that's all Sony really cares about here, is they just want a guarantee that Call of Duty can never be taken off of the PlayStation platform, and that will not ever be a possibility. So, in a way, it seems like Sony may be getting what they want out of this in the end. But we're moving on to the final topic here, which is an insider report from Tom Henderson regarding the PS5 and Sony. Says here, coming from Insider Gaming, following Sony's latest report of the company having its best quarter yet ending December 31st, 2022, Insider Gaming has received information from its sources suggesting that the company is expecting a further huge increase in PS5 unit sales at the end of this year. Insider Gaming has already reported that the company is forecasting, as of a few months ago, 30.5 million units sold in fiscal year 23, which would be just shy of the 32 million units that the company has sold entirely since the PS5 was released in November of 2020. Internal forecasts show that Sony is anticipating its lowest month to be in August of 2023 at 1.5 million units, whereas the company is expecting to sell just shy of 4.8 million units in November of 2023. The total for October, November, and December comes in at an impressive 10.5 million units predicted to be sold for the console giant. In part, the high sales numbers are thanks to the new PS5 model that will feature a detachable disc drive, which is expected to hit shelves in September of 2023. The new model is forecasted to sell 18.5 million units in fiscal year 23, meaning only around 12 million units of the quote classic PS5 will be sold before it ceases production entirely during the year. As for when the new PS5 will be announced is anyone's guess, but the production of the console kicks off in April 2023, so we'd anticipate there's probably an announcement around then. Fiscal year 23 forecasted numbers in conjunction with already sold units and the 6.2 million forecasted to be sold by the end of fiscal year 22 suggest that Sony could have sold around 68 million consoles by the end of fiscal year 2023. Although Sony still has a long way to go to beat the PlayStation 2's 155 million units sold, it will be within reaching distance of the PSP, which sold around 80 million units. So when I'm reading this report, I think that the numbers are very interesting, right? This idea that Sony's going to sell 10 million PS5 units in Q3 of fiscal year 2023 is pretty big. That's a huge number. Clearly, Sony is expecting some very big things to go down, in October, November, and December. I mean, we know Spider-Man 2 is coming out in fall of this year, so I have no doubt in my mind that Sony is aiming for a November release date for Spider-Man 2, especially after seeing what God of War Ragnarok just did releasing last November. That's what I'm anticipating. But I think a big question people also have is, okay, we are getting an idea now of how well Sony is expecting the PS5 to do all throughout 2023. What does this mean for their shows, specifically a big showcase? Well, some people might not agree with this, but when I read this information, assuming it's true, and especially highlighting the fact that Sony is anticipating their weakest month of this year sales-wise to be in August of 2023, only moving 1.5 million units, but then immediately after that, basically going into September, they expect a massive explosion of, sales. I think this confirms, at least to me, I don't say confirms, but it tells me that we're likely going to get that big PlayStation showcase in September. Now, could I be wrong here? Absolutely. In fact, I'm likely to be wrong, as I'm always wrong with these types of things. But I just can't help but feel that way when you consider that Sony has been, kind of relying pretty heavily on Final Fantasy 16, which was releasing in June. I could very well see Sony just deciding that they're going to do maybe a small state of play, one or two of them leading into the summer, right? And they're going to rely on PSVR 2, on big third-party titles like Hogwarts Legacy like they are now. This is what's going to continue, that and God of War Ragnarok, of course. This is what's going to continue to push the PS5 sales for the first half of this year. Then, by the time summer rolls around, I think Sony's going to lean heavily on Final Fantasy 16 to move PS5 units in June, July, and August. And then I think after that, that's when Sony just basically goes all in with a massive PlayStation 5 showcase in September, not only kicking off the marketing full throttle for Spider-Man 2, but showing off all these big games that we've been hoping to see and, all these new announcements. And I think that that's really what's going to allow Sony to sell 10 million plus consoles in a single quarter. I mean, that's insane. That's a huge number. So I'm only saying this because I feel like a lot of people are thinking that Sony's going to do a showcase in June, and they very well could. I want it to be known that we don't know. We cannot predict Sony. I mean, I'm going to sit here and make my own predictions and have my own speculation, but this information that we're getting, it's pretty interesting, and I feel like it can maybe give us a little bit of a better idea of, what Sony might be planning throughout the year. But again, it's worth noting that last year Sony did get by the entire year with just doing smaller state of plays, completely foregoing a showcase, and somehow they had their best quarter ever, right? I mean, it's not really a surprise how that happened. God of War Ragnarok was responsible for it. But what we have clearly learned with Sony, for better or for worse, is that they are willing to absolutely lean into their big tentpole releases rather than putting on big shows in order to, do some massive numbers during a specific quarter. So there you go. That's the report I have for you. Just wanted to take some time to talk about that and go over it with you. That's going to do it for the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found it informative. Leave it a like if you did. Subscribe if you're new. Hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share the video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.